Hello.
All right.
Good afternoon. Happy Friday. Happy almost Memorial Day weekend. You doing anything fun for Memorial Day?
I'm already having a great time, right? I mean, the Trump administration just left the stage, and I'm on the stage. I'm feeling great, you know?
Okay, Anthony, we'll get into it.
We're not talking politics. I just thought that was fantastic, right? Okay, go ahead.
I mean, to be fair, though, they are into digital assets. They've kind of opened up the door.
I give them a lot of credit, okay? I give David Sachs, Bo Hines, Atkins at SEC, I give these guys a lot of credit. The industry is going to benefit from the actions that these guys are taking, and they are putting to bed, in my opinion, the issue of partisanship around cryptocurrency regulation. So the best countries, when they regulate, they don't regulate from a partisan bias. And I think the last administration, frankly, was regulating from a partisan bias unnecessarily. It was forcing people outside the United States, forcing intellectual capital outside the United States, and I applaud these guys for not doing that.
Mm-hmm. So I didn't even introduce you, and maybe Miller did before, but Anthony Scaramucci, founder and managing partner of Skybridge, as well as SALT. We last saw each other at SALT Bermuda, which you were hosting, and a big part of what you do is talk to institutions a lot. And obviously, you've been in the space for a number of years, but you've seen it come and go with the interest. Where do you see the interest right now in institutions, specifically on Solana, given that we're at this conference?
Well, here's what I would say. I'm in the process of writing a book on Solana, and so the way I write these books is I get like a research team together, and then we go out and we interview people. We interviewed Kyle as an example, Anatoly, Raj, the whole gamut of people, Julie, et cetera. And in the process, we've interviewed chief technology officers from around Wall Street, because there's going to be a moment in time where you get that inflection point where people are like, okay, we have to tokenize. It's cheaper, it's more efficient. Remember, I came into the business of Wall Street 40 years ago. We were T+5, so literally you bought something, you had to wait 5 days, Jack, until it got into your account. It went to T+3, now it's T+1. But everybody in this room knows with Solana, it could be T plus, I don't know, let's say a minute, just to exaggerate, but it's probably 30 seconds. And so we also know that we're spending a fortune still on transaction verification. So if we could use things like Solana over the blockchain to verify the transactions, we'll save a lot of money. It's like, in the research for the book, it's $7 trillion globally that we spend verifying transactions. So that's a tremendous number. So I would just say that the CTOs I talk to, they don't want to lose their jobs. And so Solana, because of the ecosystem, because of the scale, because of the functionality, the cheapness, the throughput of Solana, it's going to be one of the major rail systems. It's not going to be the only rail system, because the world is just too big. Think of the cloud. You know, you've got 5 or 6, 10 or 12, depending on the country, different cloud providers. So you will have different providers, but this will be one of the principal providers. So if Bitcoin is the operating layer for money, Solana will be the operating layer for real-world assets, stocks and bonds, and tokenization. Not saying there won't be others, but they'll be together.
And institutions want to start doing on-chain finance on the front of real-world assets, tokenization, everything. You're nodding your head, so that's a yes?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's all going to happen. But I think the stablecoin legislation, the Genius Act, et cetera, are going to accelerate those things. And if we had less uncertainty about the tariff situation, less uncertainty about the global economy, I think that stuff would come faster.
Mm-hmm. You're also writing a book. We could talk about that. Solana Rising is what it's called. Maybe you could show the audience what it looks like if you want. But what was the impetus behind this, and why Solana?
The title of the book is Solana Rising.
Yeah.
And the cover is sort of like the sun, because I feel like Solana's more or less moving at the speed of light. And what do we know about the sun? Well, we get all of our energy from the sun, and basically that energy is free from the sun, at least, you know, for our DNA and things like that. And so my thing about Solana is it has all the metrics that you would want if you were a chief technology officer somewhere at an investment bank. If you were saying, okay, we're going to tokenize, it's cheaper to do that, what are we going to use? We'll end up using them. And an example I often use for people is long distance phone lines. When I was a kid, if you were traveling in Europe, you had to go to like the post office in Rome, you'd buy a phone card. It was $15 for 5 minutes, and you could talk to your folks, and at the end of the 5 minutes, they cut off the phone. Today, you can go in any cafe in Rome, you could just put stuff on the internet, you have a costless call, you have a George Jetson FaceTime call, and yet the phone companies didn't go out of business. Nobody really went out of business. They just changed their business models. So that's going to happen on Wall Street. You know, Jamie Dimon, the poor guy, right? He hates Bitcoin. You know, says he likes the blockchain. He had to say last week that he's going to let people buy Bitcoin. He says they can't custody it yet, but they will. They'll be custodying tokens like Solana and other layer 1 assets at JP Morgan. There'll be yield strategies off of these things, and we'll be using these things as the same way we use the cloud. You know, I must be getting old because I remember my CTO at Skybridge saying, we don't want to put anything on the cloud. And I was like, well, why not? He's like, well, we won't have the control over the information anymore. Turns out it was safer, more anonymous, and cheaper to use the cloud. And that's what's going to happen with this. And so we write a lot about this in the book. It's going to come out in September.
So you think Jamie Dimon's going to come around slowly?
Yeah, he's already come around, I think. But here's the problem. In fairness to Jamie Dimon, he's got to sit at the Congress and listen to Elizabeth Warren. And so when you've got a regime like the Biden administration, and Elizabeth Warren's been empowered to regulate and pick the players in regulation for the administration for financial services, what is he supposed to do? He's got to sort of toe the line. And so I think the thing that the Trump administration has done, which I give them a lot of credit for, this would be Bo, David, other members of that team, is that they are really trying to make this a bipartisan thing. And again, just a quick example on that, they were talking about the Bitcoin reserve. The way that executive order was architected is providing space for Democrats to get on board. You don't want a partisan idea, a partisan asset in the reserve. You know, the Democrats and Republicans don't argue about gold being in our reserve. They don't argue about oil. They don't argue about medical equipment. But they could potentially argue about something like Bitcoin because it's such a new asset in their minds. And I think this is very positive that they're doing it in this slower sort of a way.
There's another theme within the Solana ecosystem and the broader crypto space about capital formation, capital markets, bringing everything on chain, IPOs on chain, especially within Solana. I've heard that on stage and in conversations I've been having. What do you think about that? Do you think it makes sense to bring IPOs on chain and create more opportunity, or how do you look at that?
So, I mean, the short answer is yes. Not only does it create more opportunity, but it gives people that are non-traditionally linked to traditional banking an opportunity. So you don't have to have a bank account to buy an IPO on chain. You need a wallet. And so if you think about the millions of people, several hundred million people, it's probably more than a billion actually, but there's so many unbanked people. But if you just think about the idea that we could go around the banking system, imagine yourself starting a company and you've got people that have wallets out there, layer 1 protocols and wallets, and you want to go public, and you could actually do it. You could actually crowdsource the public offering through the tokenization process. So again, this will just expand the opportunity of potential participants to be involved in the IPO. And it's also better for the companies because it gives them easier access and lower cost access to capital. And just use these numbers. If you wanted to be Microsoft went public in 1986, and they paid Goldman Sachs 7% of the public offering. So they went public at $1 billion. You know, if they sold $1 billion of stock, They paid Goldman $70 million. If you were going to tokenize through an IPO process like this, we're talking about 10, 20 basis points versus 700 basis points.
Big difference.
Big difference.
Mm-hmm. Last thing, Anthony, you have a lot of conversations with asset managers, allocators, institutions, people in the industry. What is something that you're paying attention to that you think others should also be watching?
So it's a good question. The number one thing that I'm actually paying attention to, and I'm not saying other people aren't paying attention to it, but I can tell you Michael Saylor is definitely paying attention to it. These assets are transitioning into yield-bearing assets. Solana, certainly you have the staking situation, but Solana is going to be a healthy enough operating system, a healthy enough piece of software where you're going to be able to lend your Solana out. You're going to be able to go to a Goldman Sachs of crypto, like a Galaxy, post up your Solana. Sure, you'll get your staking, but you'll also be able to lend it out and get yield in addition to that. I'm not saying other people aren't talking about that, but that's something that we're working on inside of Skybridge.
Amazing. Anthony, thank you so
guys,
much.
Thank you. Have a great
everyone for
Memorial
listening
Day
in.
weekend. Thank you guys for being here. Okay, thank you. Good job.